Welcome to AERO 1020, Theory of Flight, presentation number 20 on load factor. In this presentation, we'll discuss the definition of load factor and what creates load factor. We'll look at load factor limits on the airplane structure, and we'll discuss maneuvering speed and the VG diagram. Finally, we'll discuss how load factor affects physiology. Load factor is defined as the ratio of the load supported by the airplane's wings, which is lift, to the actual weight of the aircraft at its contents. For example, if an aircraft weighs 2,000 pounds and the wings are supporting 4,000 pounds in a bank, then the load factor is 2 or 2 Gs. Load factor is commonly measured in Gs, and a G is the force of gravity. As you sit in your chair watching this presentation, you are under a load factor of 1 G. In a level bank turn, an airplane is always under a load factor of more than 1 G. If an aircraft is in straight and level flight, in other words, it's not climbing, it's not descending, and it's not turning, the aircraft is under a load factor of 1 G. When that same aircraft is in a level banked turn, some of the vertical lift created by the wings is transformed into a horizontal component of lift to turn the aircraft. So in a level banked turn, the vertical lift that was created is reduced, and additional lift must be created in order for the aircraft to maintain altitude. When an airplane is turning and maintaining altitude, the wings are generating more lift than the airplane's total weight. In this figure, the aircraft on the left is in straight and level flight. It weighs 3,000 pounds and the wings are generating 3,000 pounds of lift, so the load factor is 1 G. The aircraft in the center is in a banked turn, but the vertical component of lift is only 1,500 pounds, and the aircraft weighs 3,000 pounds. So it's not maintaining altitude. The aircraft on the right is in a level bank turn. It's generating a vertical component of lift of 3,000 pounds, exactly the same weight as the aircraft, but the total lift generated is 6,000 pounds. So this aircraft is under a load factor of 2 Gs. If we assume that the aircraft in the figure on the left weighs 2,000 pounds and is in a constant altitude turn in a 60-degree bank, the aircraft is generating 2 Gs. So the aircraft should be generating twice its weight in lift, or 4,000 pounds. Here we have a table and a graph showing angle of bank versus load factor. If you look at the graph, at a 60-degree bank, if you follow the line straight up to the curve and then over to the left, the load factor for an aircraft in a 60-degree bank is 2 Gs. And if we look at the table, we see a 60-degree bank, the load factor is 2.000 Gs. At a 45-degree bank, if we follow the graph over to the left, we see that the load factor at a 45-degree bank is somewhere around 1.5 Gs. If we look at the table, the load factor for a 45-degree bank is 1.414 Gs. So you can see the steeper the bank angle, the higher the load factor, and the more stress you put on the aircraft's wings. Every aircraft has limits on the load that it can withstand before structural damage occurs. The FAA has established limits on load factor for normal category aircraft, utility category aircraft, and acrobatic category aircraft. A normal category aircraft like the Diamond DA-40 can withstand from 3.8 positive Gs to negative 1.52 Gs. A utility category aircraft is certified to do mild acrobatics, including spins. One of the aircraft on the MTSU flight line is a Diamond DA-20. It's a two-seater Diamond, and that's certified as a utility category aircraft. MTSU students training to become CFIs are required to take spin training so that they can recognize and recover from a spin. The Diamond DA-20 is used for that spin training. Every aircraft that's certified by the FAA is required to meet certain standards for normal, utility, acrobatic, and transport categories, and that includes limit load factors. In an earlier presentation we discussed stalls and how stalls occur at the critical angle of attack. The published stall speeds for an aircraft of VSO and VS1 assume straight and level flight with a load factor of 1G. If an aircraft is banked and the load factor is increased, the stall speed is increased as well. In the graph on the right, you can see that a 60-degree bank will result in a 40% increase in the stall speed. So if the stall speed of VSO is 50 knots, and in a 60-degree bank, stall speed would be 70 knots. So again, remember, the published stall speeds for an aircraft VS1 and VSO assume 1G flight. It's not accurate above 1G. The figure on the right is a VG diagram. Every aircraft has its own VG diagram. VG stands for velocity and G's, and so the diagram shows velocity versus G's, or versus load factor. Load factor is shown on the left side of the graph, and velocity is at the bottom of the graph. These curved lines are the lines of maximum lift capability. This aircraft is not capable of developing more than about 0.7 Gs at a velocity of about 42 knots, which is the stall speed. 0.7 Gs is the maximum lift capability at that airspeed. The maximum lift capability of this aircraft at 2 Gs is a little over 100 knots. Load factors above this line are aerodynamically unavailable because the aircraft can't fly above the line of maximum lift capability because it stalls. The same line exists for negative load factors. The only difference is that the speed necessary to produce a given negative load factor is higher than the speed that is needed to produce the same positive load factor. So if you look at the VG diagram for this aircraft, the airspeed that's required to produce negative 1 Gs is about 80 knots. To produce a positive 1 G, the airspeed is about 65 knots. At 65 knots, you would be unable to exceed 1 G of load factor because the aircraft would stall. Two other important points on the VG diagram are right here and right here. This is the positive limit load factor of about 3.8 Gs, and this is the negative limit load factor of about 1.52 negative Gs. If the aircraft is flown above these load factors at any of these airspeeds, structural damage could occur. The intersection of the positive limit load factor and the line of maximum positive lift capability is the maneuvering speed of the aircraft. Any airspeed greater than this could provide positive lift capability that would be sufficient to cause structural damage. Any airspeed less than this does not provide enough positive lift capability that is sufficient to cause structural damage. At airspeeds below the maneuvering speed, load factors above this line are unavailable aerodynamically because the aircraft can't fly above the line of maximum lift capability since it will stall. The limit airspeed, or red line speed, or what's known as VNE, the never exceed speed, is the design reference point for the aircraft represented by this line. It looks like this aircraft VNE is about 195 knots. If flight is attempted beyond this airspeed, structural damage or structural failure could occur. So maneuvering speed is the maximum speed at which you can use full and abrupt control movements without overstressing the airframe. Any airspeed above maneuvering speed could cause structural damage. Some aircraft even have turbulence penetration speeds. Now, load factor not only has an effect on the structure of the aircraft, it can also have an effect on the pilot. Excessive positive G's can cause a problem with blood flow to the brain, which could cause the pilot to pass out. It can also cause problems with vision, called gray out, and stagnant hypoxia can result from excessive positive G's. Excessive negative G's can cause too much blood flow to the brain, which can cause what's called red out. That's the end of presentation 20 on load factor. The next presentation will be a discussion about thrust and propellers.